Hey. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to OLC4O Term 1B. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty. Today is January 12th, 2023. Hope everybody's doing well out there. It's starting to get a bit colder on our end back here in Sulikout, and we are, well into January. And this is class number 28 of a 36 class session of OLC4O. So we're getting pretty close to the end. We're wrapping up unit number 4, which is probably the shortest of the 4 units. And so we'll finish up most of the assignments for unit 4. We're going to do 41 and 42 today. And then next week we'll spend probably 1 or 2 classes finishing up unit 4, and then have a couple of weeks, a week and a half to get you ready for your final exam or culminating assignment. So we are in week number 7 in term 1B. We're going to spend at least a week preparing, so hoping for a week and a half, getting everybody ready for that final exam / culminating activity, with our last day of class being January 26th. That's the final broadcast. So, Unit 4, here we are. So we've got 1, 2, and 3 all wrapped up. So weeks 7 and 8 will be devoted to Unit 4. And then probably, weeks 8 and 9 is when we'll tackle the final exam or the course culminating activity. So the final exam or, one or the other, right? And then we'll also spend a lot of time just going over some key concepts of the course, just kind of review what we've learned in this course. Nice little wrap up. All right, so if you're watching on YouTube, pause that screen and know that there are many ways that you can listen to the class live. But of course, if watching on YouTube works for you, then keep doing that. Look me up, Laverty Wassa. There are many ways to submit your work online. This is the best way to get in touch with me. Email, add me as a friend on Facebook, phone one of these 2 numbers. The first one is in Sulikout, and the second one is a free long-distance number. Make sure you get in touch with me Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And here's where you should be. You should have read all your pages of Unit 1, 2, and 3. Should have completed assignments 1 through 35 by now. And make a plan for completing assignments 35 and beyond. So this, this is when you're 7 weeks in. And I would suggest this to everybody who's doing this course as an independent learner to, try to follow this guideline if you can. But if you can't, then just follow the general guideline of, trying to get a few assignments in every week, at least 2 or 3 assignments submitted every week, and then get feedback to your teacher. And that's ideal for me, right? So instead of you sending in 20 assignments or 25, which is great because you're doing the work, but best case scenario is you're giving me like a lesson with like 5 assignments in it, maybe 10 at the most. That's probably ideal for me. And then I can grade those and, number one, give you a mark. So 70 marks out of 80. But I think more importantly, you get some feedback from me and you get some ideas for improving your writing and your reading skills and all that, right? So it's a continuous feedback cycle. So I like to use the metaphor or the comparison of like coaching. And if you want to perform in a sport, then there's always kind of stuff you can do at home and things you can work on by yourself. But where you really get better as an athlete is when you've got a coach watching what you do, giving you some feedback. Just try this differently. Have you thought about doing this? And you're doing this really well, but if you changed this little piece, you would do it even better. So, and they kind of let you know that you have a lot of abilities, and they tell you things that you should celebrate about your work, and tell you things that you need to work on. So that's pretty much every facet of being a human, right? You need someone to give you some feedback every now and then. You have to believe in yourself and believe in your own abilities, but you need the humility to accept feedback from somebody else and be like, yeah, okay, there are things that I could do better at, and that applies to everybody. It's not like it's just me that needs feedback. Everybody needs feedback. Everybody could do better, no matter what ability they're at. They could always do a little bit better. So you got to be happy with where you've come and be happy with your own abilities, but keep an open mind and know that with a little bit of work, you could make it even better. So for today, we'll do our images and words of the day. We'll look at today's headline, and then we'll go into assignments 41 and 42 in Unit 4. So here's our learning goals for today. We'll do a close reading of a biography passage before writing a summary. That's assignment 41. And we'll read a short essay about applying for scholarships and respond by conducting your own research into a potential career of your choice. Assignment 42. You'll know you are successful if you can write a summary after doing a close reading of a biography passage, and if you can respond to questions about a short essay and write an information paragraph after researching potential career paths. So assignment 42 is a 3-part assignment where you read a short essay, you do some research, and then you write a paragraph of your own. So, and that is typically what happens in English courses, whether at a high school, college, or university level. You read a lot of essays, novels, short stories. You read a whole bunch of stuff that other people have written, and then you do some more research. So you find some similar documents or documents that talk about the main source, like say like a Canadian author like Richard Wagamese, for example. Like you're writing an essay about his writing, so you could read his novels and then read people writing about him. So you read the things the author wrote, you read things that people are writing about the author, and then you respond, and then you put your hat in the ring or whatever, and then you write your essay, right? So you see what everybody else is doing, and then, now it's my turn, right? So that's what assignment 42 is all about. So here's our images of the day. So with these images are kind of foretelling or sort of telling us about our future assignment, where we're going to be looking at finance and raising money in a very specific circumstance as a student, right? So I just wanted to start things off with a little bit of humor. The first one is we're at an investments and financial planning office, and the first guy says, "I retire on Friday and I haven't saved a dime. Here's your chance to become a legend." And the second one says, "All I want is a chance to prove money can't make me happy." Right? So money can't buy you happiness is, of course, a cliche that we're all familiar with. And, and it's kind of like if you don't have a lot of money, you're sort of like, well, I would at least like to have the chance to prove that that's not true, right? So it's, and I think, ultimately, I think money can't buy you happiness. But of course, if you're in a situation where you're stressed out and you're worried about paying bills and all that, then of course you're not very happy. And some money would, of course, bring you some happiness, right? But I guess the deeper lesson here is that your happiness, I guess, best case scenario, or what you're striving for in life, is that your happiness comes from the people in your life and feeling like you make a difference and that kind of thing. But of course, as we all know, money makes the world go round, and we do need it. And it's hard. It's hard to manage your own money. It's hard to manage the money of a company. There's so many moving pieces, and basically, you have to sort of like it's hard to think about the future when your present is really stressful, right? And that's sort of what the essay we're going to look at is talking about. Like being a student is stressful, and paying for your education can be stressful, and trying to make your way in this life can be stressful. But there are little ways that you could make it easier, right? If you did a little bit of research, did a little bit of work, put yourself out there are some things you could do to make that a little bit easier. But it is stressful. It is hard. But hopefully, if you use your reading and writing skills, there are some things you can do to hopefully make the situation better for yourself and better for your family. So with that note, we've got our words of the day. So our Anishinaabe word is Naji Shuniawe, is she or he goes after money, right? So that's a verb, that's an action word, and the action is going after that money, getting that money. My English word of the day is scholarship, a noun, which is a sum of money or other aid granted to a student because of merit, need, etc., to pursue, not to purse, I spelled that wrong, pursue his or her studies, okay? So it's a really important part of the definition. They've got merit and need, okay? So merit is things that you do. It's the efforts you put in. It's things you've done. So if you earn something on merit, you've earned it because you've gone out there. And usually by merit is like your grades. You've got it through performing at a high level in high school or performing at a high level in your post-secondary studies. I'm not sure. You may have heard the word meritocracy. And a meritocracy is where people sort of like they get what they get based on the amount of effort or work they put in. And then, of course, if you get it through need, that is based on, like a financial need or some other need, right? Another word you may have heard is bursary. And that's, you hear that in Canada and the United Kingdom. And it's basically the same thing. A bursary is a scholarship. So someone's going to give you money to help you as a student. And you got to like prove why you need it or just simply put in the application form. So more on that as we get into assignment 42. Some related words we have is on dise. Sorry, I kind of give a French twist to that one, but that's she or he makes a living a certain way, earns or makes money. Shunya is a noun, which is money. And then, of course, we see the, if you look at these two words, they both have a similar prefix. Remember, pre means before. So a prefix or a prefix is the part of the word that comes first. In this case, we have the ZHOON prefix. So shunya is money, and shunyake is she or he makes money, earns money. So that's a verb, right? So Anishinaabe much like English, much like other languages around the world, they're made up of little building blocks. And once you learn the building blocks, it really opens up ways of understanding a language. And when you learn a new language, it's really hard because you don't know the prefixes, you don't know the patterns. But once you start to know the patterns, you can make a guess at what the person is talking about, what that word means, and kind of piecing it all together, right? So, and there's going to be patterns in the way that words are put together, and there's going to be patterns in the way that sentences are built. So it's just really important to pay attention to these patterns as we try to understand a language, whether it's a language you know, like in my case, like English, or a language you want to know. Couple of English words. We've got financial aid, which is monetary support, such as a loan or scholarship that's used to pay for school, especially higher education. Finance is the management of revenues, the conduct or transaction of money matters generally, especially those affecting the public, as in the fields of banking and investment. So when we talk about finance, we often talk about like bigger picture finance, like the government, the public, banks, as opposed to personal finance is, you managing your money for your family, right? And so there's finance from a bigger picture, and then there's finance from like an individual perspective. And this is from the Middle English finer or fin, which means make an end, settle a debt. So that's the original meaning of the word finance, is to sort of to make an end, like the end of a transaction or the end of a settlement. Like the bank gives you $1,000 and you got to pay that back in 2 years. When you finally pay off that debt, you've made an end to that. You've finished it off, right? It's people making ends meet. You've heard that phrase, right? So when you make ends meet, that means you kind of get your finances in order. You figure out who owes what, and you pay off your bills. So when someone is making their ends meet, they're paying off their bills. They're paying off their debts. So that's the original meaning of the word. So here's our article of the day from my favorite newspaper, the Globe and Mail. So here's a story that hit yesterday. So it's air travel across the U.S. thrown into chaos after computer outage. Canadian airports hit with delays. Travelers wait in the terminal as an Alaska Airlines plane sits at a gate at Los Angeles International Airport on January 11th, right? So there's our photo. There's our caption. This is my photo credit. And this is my headline. So we got Stephanie Reynolds was the photographer who took that shot. This is the AFP, that's the Associated Press, and Getty Images, right? So a lot of photographers out there. So, it's a way to make a living in life, being a photographer. So sometimes people, they just go around the world taking pictures of things, and they put their pictures into like a database, and then you can buy this image. So the Globe and Mail would have purchased this image to use in their article, right? So that's how the photographer can make money. So, one career choice to think about, right? So being a writer or being a photographer, there's many ways that you can take pictures and then put your pictures online. And then if somebody wants to use your picture, they've got to buy it from you. Or you sell your picture to like a database, and then they sell the picture, right? So you get a piece of the money, they get a piece of the money. But there's many ways that you can sell your work online if you want to be a photographer. So there's our headline, broken down into the 9 parts of speech. So again, we've got the adjective-noun combo. We're not just talking about any kind of travel. We're talking about air travel. This is not in this. So we're talking about air travel, but specifically, we're talking about air travel across the U.S., right? So across tells us a relationship. Prepositions are relationship words. They are location words. Primarily, they're also time-based words. So they tell us where something happened. In this case, across the U.S. They were thrown, again, into another relationship words. They were thrown into chaos. After, remember, so prepositions are time words. after an outage, not just any kind of outage, a computer outage. And then we get a semicolon. So a semicolon is a really useful piece of punctuation. You don't see it too often in a headline, but it does happen. So the semicolon, what it does is it connects two full sentences or ideas, right? So when you use a semicolon, the words before the semicolon and the words after the semicolon have to be very strongly related. They have to be two, I would say, two full sentences or ideas that are, directly related to each other, right? In this case, the computer outage is directly related to Canadian airports getting hit with delays, right? So a whole bunch of stuff happened in American airports that directly affects Canadian airports because the flights coming out of America then go to Canada, so it's a ripple effect that changes everything. So let's do a little quick down to the breakdown of the article. We're looking at the first three sentences. Sorry, we're looking at the first three paragraphs of this article. I've got noun phrase preceded by a comma. So this is perhaps, just by doing this, this is the most common tool that a writer uses, especially in these information paragraphs. So a computer outage at the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration brought flights to a standstill across the U.S. on Wednesday, with hundreds of delays quickly cascading through the system, right? So we have flights brought to a standstill, and then we get a comma with hundreds of delays quickly cascading through the system, right? So everything from here to here is giving us more information, right? So when you're writing an information article, when you're writing a newspaper article, when your primary purpose, right? We're always talking about our purpose as writers. If my primary purpose is to give you information, then I'm constantly giving you lots of information, lots of new terms, lots of new ideas. And so you introduce an idea and then you expand upon it, right? So you give the reader an idea and then you expand upon it, right? So I tell you there's lots of flights that are grounded, and then you know that because those flights were grounded, there was hundreds of delays, and then I get even more information, so including at Canadian airports, right? So I get more information about the delays, what kind of delays there are, right? So and a key thing from a technical point of view here is that you get a comma and then you get a connecting word like with. You get a comma and then a connecting word like including, right? So that's how that works, right? So you give your reader, you introduce a new idea, and then you add additional information to it, and that's called a noun phrase. Here's a paraphrased quote, right? So we talked about this in yesterday's class. We can quote people. So when we quote somebody, we use quotation marks, and we are writing down exactly what that person said. Or we paraphrase them. So in this case, here's the paraphrase. The White House initially said that there was no evidence of a cyber attack behind the outage that ruined travel plans for millions of passengers. President Joe Biden said Wednesday morning that he's directed the Department of Transportation to investigate. So that's not exactly what he said, but it's almost what he said. So it's a paraphrase. If we looked up the words that Joe Biden actually used, we could do that, but just to save time, so remember, paraphrasing is usually to save time, right? To use less words. And when you're paraphrasing, you're kind of providing a summary of what the person said. All right, here's an introductory phrase followed by a comma. Whatever the cause, comma, the outage revealed how dependent the world's largest economy is on air travel. Dependent clause, noted in green, and how dependent air travel is on an antiquated computer system called the Notice to Air Missions, or NOTAM. So we got an acronym used after the full form. So anytime you use an acronym, NOTAM, you want to use the full version first. So Notice to Air Missions, that's the full version. And then you use the short version afterwards. There's some acronyms like US, United States, that's rarely ever explained. So there's going to be certain acronyms that are really, really common and people know what they mean. But and then as a writer, you got to kind of make a call. But I would argue that Notice to Air Missions is not that well known, and you should use that NOTAM. So that's just a breakdown of how someone's using the English language. We've got the apostrophe S, which means something belongs to the world. What belongs to the world? The largest economy, right? The U.S., right? And we got a dependent clause with the word dependent in it. And remember, and good review here, an independent clause is a full sentence, right? It can stand alone as a full sentence. Whatever the cause, the outage revealed how dependent the world's largest economy is on air travel. That's a full sentence. You could put a comma right there. But, and how dependent air travel is on an antiquated computer system, that's not a full sentence. Everything in green is dependent on what came before. It cannot stand as a complete sentence. But it's a partial sentence, right? And so phrases either have a subject or a verb. They don't have both. But a clause has a subject and a verb. So the verb is the action word, and the subject is a noun that the sentence is about. So always good to review those basic parts of speech, okay? All right, so let's jump into assignment 41, the summary. We're going to read a short piece about Robert Checkwich, and we're going to underline or highlight some information that we think we should include in the summary. Then we're going to write a one-paragraph summary of the biography we have read. So you're writing a paragraph. Let's underline some key concepts. That paragraph should have at least 5 or 6 sentences and contain the main idea of the article with some supporting details. Your audience is an adult interested in reading about the author of the Green Star Lake series, and you're going to submit both a rough copy and a final copy. So rough copy and final copy of your summary for marking. So pay close attention to the assignment guidelines. Sometimes when I mark a student's work, they don't submit the rough copy, or they only submit the rough copy and they don't submit the final copy. So read the assignment guidelines carefully. I try to do my best to break things down for you in my classes, but it's your job as a student to take responsibility and look at the assignment guidelines and ask yourself, what is being asked of me? So in this case, what's being asked of you is to produce a rough copy and a final copy. So you better do both, okay? So let's jump into it, okay? You're going to use reading strategies to identify and highlight the main ideas and details in the text. Use the checklist and rubric provided to write your rough draft. Hand in your rough draft, if you wish. Revise your work and prepare a final copy for your portfolio. So more on that later. Next week, we're going to delve into the portfolio and what you need to do to create that portfolio. So have I clearly stated the main idea? We'll come back to this. Have I included at least 2 supporting details needed to understand the main idea? Do the details clearly relate to the main ideas? All right, so you need to identify the main idea. Then you need details that support the main idea. And then you need to order your sentences, right? So this is the revision process, right? The revision process is when we reorder the sentences in our work. Have I written a closing sentence that reminds the reader of what has been written? And have I used my own words? So have I paraphrased, right? And that's what we're looking at for this assignment. This assignment, the summary, is you paraphrasing. And so when you provide a summary of something, you're often paraphrasing it, right? So you're not directly quoting it. You're just putting it into your own words, which is a very useful exercise to do. So let's look at part one. Robert Checkwich spent several years as a language arts teacher and school principal in First Nations communities in northern Manitoba, Cree, and northern Quebec, Algonquin. The people and events he writes about in the novels are fiction, but are reflections of his experience in the North. See, I can't help myself. That should probably be fictional. I don't think characters can be fiction, but they can be fictional. Fiction's a noun, fictional is the adjective, right? So he writes about fictional things, but those things are based upon real experiences that he happened. So let's just keep reading. Actually, no, let's highlight. So he's a teacher and a principal in First Nation communities, right? So you've got a First Nation, a man living in First Nation communities, acting as a teacher and a principal, and then using those experiences to write novels. So that's what we got so far. And here we go. We got a quote, okay? I began to realize that interest in reading dropped off significantly as First Nation students progressed through the middle years, Robert said. So your middle years, you know, like are probably like grades 3 to 6. Robert said students who had difficulty reading after grade 4 or 5 are losing interest in books, making it challenging for teachers, who often find considerable differences in reading levels within one class. By the time students reach grade 10, many were 2 or 3 grades below where they should be in reading skills. All right, so we've got a teacher living in northern communities, acting as a teacher and a principal, basing his novels on those experiences, and then while he's doing that teaching, he makes an observation that his students are losing interest in reading and they're falling behind in grade levels. That made it difficult for them to read math questions and texts in other subjects. This contributed to feelings of frustrations and a lack of confidence, and also was a definite impediment in their efforts to graduate from high school, especially when they had to attend schools outside their communities. So he's noticing that a lack of literacy skills, you know, what we're developing in this course, the Ontario Literacy Course, so that these students had these reduced literacy skills began to not just affect them in English courses, it also started to affect their other grades like math, and that's really why literacy skills are so important. So it doesn't matter what field you go into, like if you want to be in the sciences or the trades, you have to read stuff, and you have to read manuals, and you have to read complicated instructions, and you have to read all kinds of things. So if your reading skills are suffering, it's going to make it hard for you to be a student. He found that there was little reading material to which older students in the North could relate. I felt that the life they knew in northern communities, the unique situations and activities, the traditional ways, could form the basis of novels to interest students who might not otherwise read much fiction. This has been my goal from the beginning, to get students to read the first few pages and want to continue reading. Okay? All right, so this is what I would suggest you do. Assignment 41. Plan. Step 1. So, if we go back, if we think back to our checklist, the first thing we should do is identify, what is the main idea here. And then what we can do is you can just jot down ideas and things that come to your mind, right? So if we're asking that question, what is the main idea? I'm just going to write down some terms. First Nation communities. Reading ability. Students. He talked about lived experience. Helping students. Talked about writing books. Talked about literacy skills. So there's some concepts we have on the board. First Nations communities, reading abilities, helping students, lived experiences, writing books. And I would say that reading ability and literacy skills are kind of tied together. I would say the lived experience of the students and the writer. So what is the main idea of this paragraph, right? So I look at all this, and I'm still asking my question, what's the main idea? And this is the, so remember, it's a biography, right? So remember, we'll think back to what we know. So bio means life, and graphy means to write or write about. So a biography passage is writing about someone's life, right? And auto means self. So writing about your life, writing about your own life is an autobiography. So if this is a biography, if it's writing about someone's life, the main idea should be, basically, I would argue, the main idea might be, let's say, explaining the author's mission, or what he was trying to accomplish, what problem, what problem was he trying to solve? And how? And why? Right? And so you might wanna use that approach, like the news report article, the who, what, where, why, how, and when, right? So I would say that when he did it is not that important. Where he did it is definitely important. Why he did it, how he did it, right? So that's really that's the main idea of the article, right? So especially a biography, right? So when you write a biography about someone, and in this case the biography is like 4 paragraphs, so it's not a very long biography, but it's a story about this guy's life. And he's not just any guy, he's a teacher, principal, writer. So we're trying to explain his mission, what was he trying to accomplish, what problem is he trying to solve, and how and why did he solve that problem, okay? So I'll just quickly erase this on the board. So step 1 is that planning. And I would say for the purposes of this assignment, I would argue that your planning process should really just be to answer that question, right? Just answer the question of what is the main idea, right? And then once you have that main idea, then you need at least 1, maybe 3. You need your supporting ideas, right? Ideas or facts or however you want to call them. So phrase it. So phrase the main idea. And remember, I'm arguing that you should answer this question. What problem was he trying to solve? How and why did he do it? What is his mission? So Robert Checkwich's mission was to, his goal in life was to, by writing the Green Star Lake novels, he wanted to, right? So he wants to do something, and whether or not he did that and was successful is debatable, but, I mean, he certainly had a mission. What was that mission, and how did he do it, right? This is the how. And not so much the why, but this is the how we did it, right? So the main idea is why he did it, right? That explains why. And then the supporting ideas will explain how we did it, right? Writing novels, right? So based on living in the North, right? Things like that, right? So he had a mission, and then he did that mission by doing it this way, right? So, and that's the connecting idea that I would suggest you follow through, right? So once you've done that, you'll go back and you'll review it. Did you state a main idea? Did you include at least 2 details that supported the main idea? Do those details closely relate to your main idea? So if they support it, they'll definitely relate to it. Are your sentences in an order that makes sense, right? So pay attention to the order you talk about in, right? You should probably write this in chronological order. So he learned these things, and then he did that. Have I written a closing sentence that reminds the reader of what has been written, right? So your closing sentence is going to be related, or it will rephrase the main idea. When you're writing anything, or especially if you're delivering a speech or you're talking to people, it never hurts to remind your reader or your audience of the main idea of what you're talking about. People's attentions will drift in and out when you're talking to them, right? They'll be looking at their phone or whatever, or maybe they're not reading as closely as they should. It's often good to come back to that main idea to reinforce it. You're trying to make an argument, okay? And then you especially want to do that at the end of your piece of writing. You want to come back and just rephrase the main idea, and then have I used my own words, okay? So review what you wrote carefully. Make sure you're not just typing in what's in the article, in the biography summary. Make sure you're rephrasing that, okay? Be careful of that. All right, assignment 42, just demonstrating understanding, identifying resources. So part A is 20 marks. Read the article entitled A Guide to Scholarships, Awards, and Applications by Rob Taylor and answer the questions that follow. Be sure to use complete sentences. So part A, we're looking at an article written by Rob Taylor. Use your own words to explain why Rob Taylor, who did not receive any money when he was going through school, has taken the time to write this article. List the steps Rob suggests in order, and give a brief explanation of each step. 10 marks. Do you think you will use Rob's advice in this article? Why or why not? 2 marks. All right, so maybe we'll just spend a bit of time today looking at that article. Just give me 1 sec to pull that up. I'm just going to pull up a PDF version of our article found in your unit work and then just go through it with you. So we'll spend the last 7 minutes just kind of introducing ourselves to this concept, and then we'll delve into it in more detail. All right, so here we go. So let's keep these questions in our mind, okay, as we read this, okay? So we're being asked to explain in our words. So why should we listen to this guy Rob Taylor? He didn't make any money. He didn't get any scholarships when he was going to school. So, why is he writing an article about scholarships and earning money? So, why did he take the time to write the article? What's his purpose? What's his mission? So think back to like Robert Checkwich. What was his mission in writing Jimmy Comes Home and his other books? What was he trying to achieve? What was Rob Taylor trying to achieve? List the steps he suggests and give a brief explanation of each step. And then simply say if you think you would use his advice. Yes or no, and why. Okay, so let's delve into it. Here we go. A Guide to Scholarships, Awards, and Applications. When I was in school at both the University of Toronto and Ryerson, I didn't receive a cent of scholarship money. I did receive an honorarium for being president of the Student Residence Council at U of T Scarborough, and I did receive some money from the Millennium Scholarship Fund, but that was more loan relief than a scholarship. I had to be in debt to get the money, and it was applied directly to my OSAP benefit. While it was nice to have less OSAP to pay back, some actual cash would have been nice too. The reason I didn't receive any scholarships was twofold. First, I wasn't a brilliant enough student to be automatically chosen to receive a scholarship. I got by with high B's and the occasional low A until my last year at Ryerson, when I seemed to hit A's pretty much across the board, and then it was too late to get a scholarship. The second reason I didn't get any scholarships was that I was ill-informed. This was partially due to the limited resources available to me and partly due to my own laziness. When I was in high school, there was no World Wide Web, and internet was a funny-sounding word my uncle used occasionally. I wasn't all that close to my guidance counselor, and I wasn't even thinking beyond the summer when I applied to university. I didn't apply for any scholarships. Hell, I didn't even look for any scholarships. I thought scholarships were for football players going to school in the States. So why am I now writing an article to help students get scholarships? A part of my duties as senior editor at Edge Interactive is overseeing the content of a family of websites which include schoolfinder.com, myschool101.com, and scholarshipscanada.com. Part of what I do is to look after a large database of scholarships, well over 60,000 individual awards, awarded by over 300 organizations across Canada. Each year, each year we compile all of the scholarships in our database that are for students who are already or who are going into the first year of college or university and publish them in a scholarships.com entrance awards directory. So basically, I'm a guy who has read, written, and edited information on thousands of different scholarships. I've also talked to hundreds of students about helping them with their scholarship searches and written several articles published on our site and in the directory dealing with scholarships, grants, and loans. What I hope this article will do is fill you in on things I've seen and heard in the hunt for scholarships so you'll be better armed than I was. Okay, so right there. He's literally saying what he hopes the article will do. So pay attention to that last paragraph right there that I'm highlighting right here, right? So he's literally telling you that's what he hopes to do with the article, right? So it's a 4-page article, so we won't have time to do it all today, but I just wanted to focus on the headings, right? So using our reading strategies of, scanning and skimming, if we just skim this thing, it's written into certain parts, right? So he gives you an introduction, and what he's doing here is he's giving you a brief biography of his life, his experience in school, what he thought scholarships meant, and then later, after he graduated, then he transitioned into working for this company, which is called Edge Interactive. So he's a senior editor, right? So if you get a job as an editor, that doesn't mean that you spend your whole day editing. A lot of what you do as an editor will be editing people's work, but editors are also writers. And that ties into what I've talked a lot about in this course, that we learn to be writers by learning to be editors. We learn how to become better writers by editing our work. And editing, as we've learned, is a key part of the writing process. So he's a senior editor, so he's a top-level writer-editor at this company called Edge Interactive. And the reason why he wrote this article is right there, to arm students and to help them in the hunt for the scholarship so they're better armed than I was, right? So he's using a couple of metaphors, right? You're on the hunt, you're armed, you got to go out there, you got to track down that scholarship and bring in that money. Bring in the shunya, right? So you need to know your armory. So an armory is a bunch of skills and, weapons that you have in your hopes to get a scholarship. So that's all the time we have for today. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll finish reading this article, and then we will look at parts B and part C, and then we'll jump into the next assignments in this course. So thanks for tuning in today, and I will see you tomorrow.